25. Is the university beyond the law? In the name of academic freedom, the modern university today claims to be beyond the law and a law unto itself. In this stand, the universities have been under serious attack of late, and there is no question but that some or many of these attacks have been ill-advised, too sweeping or too vague. But the defence of the universities has often been equally precarious, and the academic freedom too often asserted has been a modern variation of an ancient dogma which divides responsibility in human society and creates a segment which is its own law. The roots of the concept of academic freedom are medieval and akin to canon law. The universities are heirs of a concept of law which makes them free of all courts save their own. Is this new canon law to be recognised as such? Are the professors the new clerks of society and thereby exempt from its law? For the roots of this current claim are medieval and represent a dogma of long-standing history. To assess its merits, the background must be understood. One of the persistent problems of medieval life, one which in many respects lingers to this day, was the relationship of church and state. We have seen that it was a claim of the Roman See that the church was beyond the reach of secular law and subject only to its own authority. Thus, if a member of the clergy was charged with any crime, whether an offence against the moral law, murder, theft, or the like, he could escape the arms of the secular courts. The poet Ben Jonson, for example, in 1598, escaped the gallows for the murder of Gabriel Spencer by pleading benefit of clergy, for which he had only a technical qualification. Only after long controversy was the present precarious compromise attained in most modern states, whereby the state surrenders claims to jurisdiction in the spiritual realm in return for the recognition of one law in the temporal realm. In the American Compromise, the state recognized a common law Christianity in the form of a recognition of a general conformity to its norms, as with the ban of polygamy, the support of a chaplaincy, etc., in a settlement which can be better termed disestablishment than separation. But the crisis of modern civilization is in part the breakdown of the concept of authority. As long as the idea of law retained its validity and was undergirded by a belief in the absolute and transcendent God behind and beyond it, Western society had vitality. But justice is a metaphysical concept, as is law, and the breakdown of metaphysical validity for law has been the breakdown of society. When natural law and reason were regarded as the immanent principle of the deity, man was the substance and end of society, and society itself was accident and relation. As a result, man's natural rights were championed against the claims of the state. Subsequently, as Romanticism developed this doctrine, the divine immanence was transferred from reason to the folk and the state. The divine reason was immanent in the human will, the common will, and the state was the expression of the general will, thus giving priority to the state and limiting man to a merely formal freedom. Rights passed over to the state. The decline was furthered by the positivist destruction of the metaphysical concept of justice, making true law and justice merely the product and will of the strongest force. Modern society believes it has solved the matter of the relationship of church and state by granting freedom of worship, which is a declaration of the irrelevancy of worship to society. And yet this freedom of worship is not a reality. What, for example, the United States has is a toleration of all religions insofar as their practices are not offensive to common law Christianity and morality. Thus, religious polygamy, as with Mormonism, was forbidden, and cannibalism, human sacrifice, and other cultic practices offensive to Christian and modern secular sense were also banned. But in so ruling, the Supreme Court repudiated the rights and power of religion to dictate our acts. Can a man excuse his practices because of his religious belief? To permit this would be to make the doctrines of religion superior to the law of the land, and in effect to permit every citizen to become a law unto himself. Government could exist only in name. As far back as 1927, a secular writer like Leon Whipple recognized the dilemma of modern man in this situation. This concept of religious liberty leaves nothing to religion except mere belief and opinion, and establishes as final authority the will of the majority as expressed in the state. The older conception of an established church to the exclusion of all others made an ecclesiastical institution the expression of the divine will. The modern conception of religious liberty makes the state the vehicle of truth. But because the state now lacks the backing of metaphysical truth, every citizen has become a law unto himself and his own tyrant, and the state an unlimited and uncontrollable God. And because of the usually mutually exclusive claims of church and state, each can accord the other only a basically subordinate role. Furthermore, because of the relationship of authority and liberty, to deny authority to or limit the authority of either church or state is to limit its liberty. Similarly, when the university claims to be beyond the law in matters pertaining to academic freedom, it denies both the authority and liberty of church and state. Thus, church-controlled colleges not infrequently deny that the church or state has any authority to limit their teaching or writing, that, although a church may be supporting the school in order to promote a particular theology, it cannot control that school without offence. The church, thus, was not alone in claiming to be a separate realm. The school advanced a like claim patterned after that of the church, and we have seen that German universities did succeed in gaining their own jails, and English universities at least gained their own representatives in Parliament. Originally, they held to a concept of responsibility under God. Most American colleges and universities share with their continental cousins an ecclesiastical origin or purpose, now in most instances lost. To replace the old responsibility and function, the new concept of academic freedom has been developed. The university is responsible to itself, a poor substitute for God, and its liberties cannot be infringed by society without destroying the concept and practice of freedom. Is this doctrine either true or realistic? The first challenge to it comes from the modern state. The state has replaced the church as the significant sponsor of education. Not even Protestant and Roman Catholic colleges and universities are free from this sponsorship in the form of various subsidies, whether veterans' educational provisions, military training programs, special research grants, and the like. The price of supports is always control, and the university cannot complain of government interference when it accepts so readily the government's support. In a day when the universities most loudly proclaim their autonomy, they are most rapidly and too often willingly succumbing to the encroachments of statism. A kept woman has no honest protest against adultery or claim to virginity. The position of the university today is analogous. The charge against her is that she is guilty in many areas of promoting statism. Her answer is that she has no entangling alliances with anyone, and that she is beyond the challenge of church, states, or society, because the new canon law of academic freedom makes her a law unto herself, subjects only to self-discipline, and with offenders in her circle liable only to the academic courts. As long as the university does either or both of two things, this claim and hope is totally unrealistic. First of all, the university cannot accept the support of any local, state, or federal agency without rendering itself into the hands of that body as a ward. Even as a farmer cannot accept price supports without being legally liable to government restrictions and controls, so no institution, the university included, can commit itself to any measure of wardship without a surrender of liberty. If the restrictions and pressure are lightly exercised, it is only because the sponsoring agencies have been lax in exercising their rights. But it is significant that the main area of pressure on universities and the institutions of loyalty oaths has been in state universities. The state rightly asserts its title to loyalty from its wards, and the university cannot protest legitimately without also renouncing the funds which give jurisdiction. The free university, like the free society, is ultimately incompatible with state support and control. The university has failed to see the irony of its position in defending or protecting its communist or ostensibly communist faculty members. It insists on protecting the promulgation of the most insistent and tyrannous statism, while at the same time wailing against a minor assertion of statism in the form of the loyalty oath and government's investigation. This points clearly to the second step. Not only must the university, if it be consistent, reject statism internally and externally, but it must recognize that the free university can exist only in a free society and that it has an obligation to promote that society. The university cannot shirk its cultural and sociological obligation without ruin to itself. A major and insistent threat to academic freedom today is the decline of private giving to education. The mainsprings of freely given financial supports are drying up as a result of the rise of statism. A confiscatory system of taxation and a policy of government encroachment on a free economy increasingly render it difficult for the university to command a financial support from a financially free population. Lacking these sources, the university finds very tempting the constant flow of government funds. Today, atomic research and, with it, allied avenues of study has largely passed into the hands of the government and its subsidized allies. The temptation grows to emphasize the value of research in terms of governmental needs. Today, even anthropology has come to represent, in some instances, the viewpoints of the Department of the Interior in finance researches which are congenial to the outlook of the Indian Service. But such support is unavoidable when private sources are drying up. To assert the irrelevance of this social problem to the university is as weak a viewpoint as art for art's sake. The university is an instrument of society rather than of church or state, and can only sever itself from it at the price of its relevant existence. Assuming that the free society is firmly established, can the university then make good its claim to be beyond the law? Can it defend its right to protect from external criticism men guilty of sexual perversion, many of whom find a convenient and safe asylum in university circles? Can it challenge the right of society to change its faculty members with treasonable associations and acts? Can it properly claim to be the possessor of a new canon law which places its members beyond the pale of all other law? The university must certainly be free from the states and subject essentially to the government of its boards and academic senate. But in an interdependent society, the university is never free of obligations and never beyond the law. It cannot be free from the requirements of either God or society, except at the peril of ruin. Society is not the state. It is the roots and ground which nourishes the state, church, and university, and to separate itself from society means a withering away of the university life in the anemic isolation of decadence. The university cannot renounce society, its laws, or its norms. It is free under law. To be free beyond the law means the tyranny of irresponsibility, and it is this tyranny which today manifests itself in too many university circles and cloaks itself in the claim to academic freedom. In a sense, as Buckley has pointed out, the laissez-faire concept has heavily influenced educational thinkers. Having denied the validity of laissez-faire in economics, the university in particular has been emphatic in asserting its radical validity in educational controls. But there is a difference. Laissez-faire economic theory insisted on the sovereignty of law, each sphere of human activity being in itself a law sphere and strictly circumscribed by the laws thereof. But modern educational relativism is hostile to this concept of law. Wherever else some relativistic concept of law might or must be utilized, in the university not even this measure of law can be tolerated. It is held. Here, in the quest for knowledge, man must be beyond the law. Here the autonomy of his being is to be manifested. Here, in the one place, by concession of state and society, a given epoch may cultivate the clearest possible self-awareness, for it is a human right that man must be allowed somewhere to pursue truth unconditionally and for its own sake. What is basic to this concept of academic freedom? What presupposition undergirds its claim to be beyond the law? As Russell Kirk has asked, can there be an end or aim to anything without a religious interpretation of life? I repeat that we all have our absolutes, our dogmas, if we are reflective men, whether we acknowledge them or treat them as bastards. When institutions, through loss of rationale, begin to move in terms of power instead of meaning, their end is in view. The university has clearly revealed this grasping for power in faculty and administration, and the same trend is apparent also in the state. The objective idea or world reason of modern man is no longer the university, and, though having long served the state, is less and less identifiable with it. It is now increasingly incarnated in autonomous man who is held to be beyond the law. This autonomous man demands of the universe not law, with its implication of judgment and punishment by a superior power, but unlimited and unconditional love and freedom. For the existentialist and the radical relativist, God is no longer a problem, other people are. His own unconditional autonomy must require the lawless love which is beyond good and evil, and this constitutes a societal problem. Whatever concessions are made on this societal level, however, none can be made where the pursuit of truth is concerned. Here, man functions as the autonomous seeker and interpreter, and as the source of law and meaning. He is beyond the law, even as in Orthodox Christian theology, God is beyond the law, by virtue of his total sovereignty.